Today we're talking about the 5 things that I did to stop wasting my evenings and start making progress on what actually mattered to me. But we're not talking about the surface level productivity hacks like the Pomodoro technique or cutting out Netflix, because it's likely that you already know those things. So today we're going to go a level deeper into the psychology of why you waste your evenings in the first place and into the shifts that you can make to actually make a difference. Because I used to come home every night frustrated. It felt like the best hours of the day were gone and I didn't really have anything to show for it. So I did what most people do, or what most people say to do, which was that I tried to force it. I tried to follow all these productivity hacks. I tried to enforce a strict schedule and all these rigid rules. But what I found is that I'd only be able to stay committed to it for a few days before I was right back where I started. And that's when I realized that I was treating these symptoms and not the root cause of why I was procrastinating on what was important to me. And I think Carl Jung sums it up perfectly. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." There were invisible forces driving my behavior every evening. When I understood them, that's when everything changed. So in this video, I'm breaking down the 5 shifts that finally helped me take back my evenings. So the first thing that I did was that I identified the limiting beliefs that kept me from taking action. To be honest, this one hit me really hard when I finally saw it. Growing up in an immigrant family, my parents didn't really ask me for my opinion. It just wasn't part of our culture, and I think in some ways it was kind of frowned upon to give your opinions, especially when adults are talking. So growing up with that upbringing, I just learned that my opinion didn't matter, or at least that's the story that I started to tell myself. And I started to internalize that. I didn't realize how ingrained this was in me until I carried this belief with me into adulthood, and it started showing up in places that I didn't even notice at first. For years, I procrastinated on making fitness videos, even though I have a degree in kinesiology during my undergrad, and I've been working out for the last 10 years. I had the knowledge and years of experience, but for some reason I had this voice in my head that kept questioning me and asking, like, who are you to put yourself out there? And then I would also scroll through social media and see all the gurus and the people with the perfect physiques and like the huge followings, and I just thought that there was no room for me in this space. But here's what I've finally come to understand, which is that just because someone is further along doesn't mean that I don't have something valuable to contribute to the space. And that doesn't mean that my perspective and experiences and knowledge isn't valuable. There are people who need exactly what I know, the information, the systems, the perspective, that all come from my unique experience. So that belief that my voice didn't matter, it was just old programming running in the back of my head, not truth, but just conditioning. The moment I became aware of that limiting belief, something shifted, and that shift created space between the story I was telling myself and who I actually am. And in that space, I could finally start taking action. So ask yourself, what unconscious stories and beliefs are you carrying? And what beliefs are keeping you stuck? Because we all have them, these unconscious beliefs that shape our behavior. And some of them are quietly sabotaging the lives that we want to build. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's when real change starts to happen. The second shift that I made is to stop trying to skip the process. A trap that I see a lot of us fall into is that we compare our beginnings to someone else's 10 years of experience. And that's exactly what I did when I started YouTube. I'd watch other creators and compare myself to them, even though they had been in the game for years before I even started. They'd have the best editing, the best delivery, the best camera equipment, and all these things that made me think, like, how could I possibly compete with them? I was intimidated for the longest time, and I felt in over my head and overwhelmed because I thought that I had to be at their level straight away, or what was the point? But then I heard a quote that changed everything, which is that we often overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, but underestimate what we can achieve in 3. And that's when it clicked, because I was having all this pressure to have it all figured out now. But what I realized is that growth doesn't work like that. So I had to make a decision to commit to the process and to take it one day at a time, one video at a time, rather than trying to skip to the end. I had to stop looking for shortcuts and just do the work. And that's when something shifted, because everything stopped feeling so overwhelming and I could just commit to the process and start actually enjoying it. And what I realized is that the person I wanted to become, the creator, the communicator, that person wasn't waiting for me at the finish line. That person had to be built through going through the process. The character development I wanted would only happen through the doing of the work. So stop trying to skip to the end, embrace the work, because the progress and the growth happens in the repetition, in the middle, and in showing up even when it's hard. The third shift that I made to stop wasting my evenings after work is to create a system. When I started anesthesia school, one of my instructors said something that changed my perspective on life. He said, "You don't rise to the level of the moment, you fall to the level of your habits." So grad school was probably one of the craziest, most chaotic times of my life. But ironically, that was also the time where I made the most progress on my fitness journey. And it's counterintuitive because these moments like grad school and these other time periods of deep focus and intensity is typically when people allow their fitness to slide. Between classes, deadlines, other commitments, and just trying to find time to sleep, fitness and going to the gym and nutrition is typically the last priority. And if I'm being honest, during this time, fitness was also not the main priority for me. I was completely focused and consumed with getting my degree. But the thing is that I had systems in place. My meal prep schedule was locked in, my workout schedule was automatic, and I also had a lot of small habits that I had implemented over time that just essentially made fitness automatic for me. And I didn't really have to think about it because it was on autopilot. And because of that, even when sometimes it felt like everything else around me was falling apart, the one thing that stayed intact was my fitness. And that is the true power of a system, because it works when you're feeling motivated, but also works when you're tired and feeling overwhelmed. So what I had to understand is that setting a goal isn't enough. The goal is the destination, but the system is how you get there. What I also learned is that you have to focus on creating something sustainable, something that doesn't require you to be perfect or super inspired every single day, something that holds up even when life gets hard. Because it's inevitable that you're gonna have a hard day and you'll have times when things go wrong. And if you're only relying on motivation, then you're going to quit. But if you have a system in place, you'll keep moving forward and making progress even when you don't feel like it. The fourth thing that I did is that I got used to doing boring things. The people who succeed aren't the people with the best ideas or the most talent. They're the ones who could do the boring things repeatedly. When we see someone hit a huge milestone like graduating or growing a YouTube channel or growing a business, we only see the highlight reel. We don't see the day-to-day unglamorous tasks like the studying, the research, and the repeatedly boring task with nobody cheering them on. But that's exactly what ironically gets them the results. Not the exciting stuff, but the boring stuff. And in fitness is the exact same thing. You're eating the same meals every day. You're doing the same workouts repeatedly. You're not looking for novelty, you're just looking for consistency. It's always funny to me when people ask me what my workout plan is and then I share it with them and they always comment on how simple it is. I get confused because I think people think that I know some magical information that they don't. But the truth is just that I've gotten very used to doing boring things for long periods of time. And what I've come to realize is that most people don't like boring. A lot of people want like the next shortcut or some type of hack that'll make life or something easier to achieve. The thing is that those people will continue to always chase that next shiny object. But the people who really make it are the people who embrace the process and come to the realization that success is built on repetition. Once you've accepted this and truly internalized it, you've separated yourself from 99% of people. Your habits will start to compound, and then time does the work and the result becomes inevitable. Okay, so the fifth shift that I made is that I got off/limited my social media. If you want to be successful at anything, you have to do things differently from the majority of people. And right now, most people are stuck on their phones and endlessly, mindlessly consuming social media. And I get it because I've been there. Like I've done multiple social media cleanses where I'll be off of social media for a week, maybe a month, and then before I know it, I'm right back into the habit. But this is the first time that I finally have a deeper understanding of why I need to limit my use. So as human beings, we are wired to be social, and anything that exploits that is going to be addictive. All of these social media companies, they know this, so they've created these algorithms that are designed to keep you stuck and to keep you scrolling for hours. And I'm not saying that you have to delete everything, but I am saying that you should try to limit and control your use. For me, what I did is that I deleted the majority of the apps off of my phone, Instagram, TikTok, the very addicting ones, and I limit my use. So now I only check it once a day on the computer, which I know sounds lame, but it's been the only thing that I've been able to do to implement to really limit my use. But ever since I've done this, I've noticed that my attention span has slowly begun to come back. Before, I couldn't even get through a simple article without being distracted because I was so used to having that quick dopamine hit, that cheap dopamine hit from the short form content or the constant distractions and constant stimulation. But once I stepped back and stopped allowing myself to feed into that addiction, I noticed that something shifted and I could finally think clearly and think deeply again. The moment that you're able to reclaim your attention is the moment that you'll be able to direct it towards what actually matters. Because your attention is the most valuable thing that you have. The moment that you're able to control it is the moment you'll be able to build something meaningful. There are pivotal moments in life, moments where you stand at a crossroads and you have to make a choice between what you want now and what you want the most. And right now, there are unconscious loops running, loops that are keeping you stuck, and maybe even for years. And the real question isn't if you can change them, it's whether or not you're willing to do the work. Because this programming didn't develop overnight, so don't expect it to change after watching one video or making one decision. But here's what I know from experience. If you go through these steps and you actually put in the work, then it's just a matter of time. Time before the pattern breaks and you finally make the shift, the decision, the internal decision to stop wasting your evenings and finally start using them to build a life you want. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Go ahead and drop a comment down below for which shift you want to make this week. And also drop a like, a comment, a subscription. It really helps out the channel. I appreciate every single one because it really does help out. And I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, you already know. Don't drift. Until I carried this belief into adult and